All right, good evening. Welcome to the Anacortes City Council meeting of April 1st, 2024. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Mr. Franciak, would you take the roll, please?
Mr. Fantini.
Here.
Mr. Young.
Present.
Mr. Walters.
Here.
Ms. Cleland McGrath.
Here.
Ms. Moulton.
Here.
Mr. McDougall.
Here.
Ms. Hubick. Thank you.
Mayor Miller,
Ms. Moulton.
I move to excuse Councilmember Hubick from tonight's meeting.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Moulton, a second by Mr. Young to excuse Ms. Hubick. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, well, we'll get started with the announcements and committee reports. Thanks for all of you coming out on this beautiful spring day. So happy new month. And just a reminder, it is spring break for the Anacortes School District, so pay attention. There might be a few more kiddos out and about. So I got a few announcements, so bear with me. I'll start with the Department of Ecology. Department of Ecology will host an A Avenue landfill site public hearing April 15th at 4 p.m. in City Hall. Ecology will be collecting comments on two documents. First document is an agreed order that requires the city to investigate the conditions at the site and complete a remedial investigation. The second document is the public participation plan. So just a quick history, A Avenue landfill was constructed approximately the mid-1940s through the 1960s through the mid-70s. It was a municipal waste site where trash was burned. And then it was just a landfill without burning from the 70s until 2006, and it was just for public works materials. So Skagit County Public Health confirmed steps to close that landfill, conducted a site hazard evaluation, and in 2009, Ecology issued a no further action. But in 2019, community members reached out to Ecology, and in 2019, and then in 2020, Ecology withdrew its previous no further action. Determination, and now the site is on Ecology's contaminated sites list for further evaluation under MATCA, which is the Model Toxin Control Act. So comments can be submitted in person at this meeting or online until April 23rd. Last week I answered a media inquiry with regards to the legislative session, so I figured I'd update the council on that. And Association of Washington Cities also sent out today their recap. They will have a webinar on the 11th, and that's for members of the Association of Washington City, which, for those of you who don't know, it's a member organization with 281 cities in Washington State. So just a couple of highlights based on Council's 2024 priorities. Change in pursuit laws to reasonable suspicion. Funding for, I don't think this was on the list, but it will certainly help with our law enforcement asks. Funding for eliminating the local government match for Basic Law Enforcement Academy, as we have a number of officers that will be going through that. Funds to increase the capacity of the Crisis Stabilization Center, which addresses a broader need for behavioral health beds. Also liability protection for our outreach teams, so we'll be talking about that tonight, or we have some here tonight. No movement on tort reform, data protection, juvenile access for attorneys. No specific action regarding International Ferry to Sydney prior to 2030. But on the International Ferry run, it did come to our attention the presence of social media asking community members to complete a survey regarding the Anacortes International Ferry Run. So I reached out to members of our local ferry advisory committee. I happen to be one of them. And no source or organization is yet to be identified. But it seems most of the content is accurate, and it does seem to be comments that oppose the repeal of the Cap and Trade Initiative, which the legislature is tying some of the ferry fundings to. So again, not a FAC or a city-sponsored survey website, just for your information. Happy to report, after much coordination between staff and contractor, Janicki Construction, lights are now installed at the skate park. Operating hours are dawn to 10 p.m. RFP and ERP, those are fun acronyms. RFP, a request for proposals, has closed for the ERP, which is our Enterprise Resource Program replacement. So together with our consultant, which is Soft Resources, that council approved that contract some weeks ago, we will be evaluating the multiple proposals in the coming weeks. Couple more. We are at the beginning of the end of major construction on our fiber backbone. Summit X is starting this week, but I won't steal the rest of the Fiber Committee's thunder, but it's just pretty exciting that we're seeing the beginning of the end. This is Food Waste Prevention Week, 1 through 7 April, and it's estimated we waste upwards of 30% of the food we buy, so consider saving money and energy, that energy to produce that excess food. And you can learn more about this Western Washington University Skagit Extension website or in person, as they are hosting an event on April 6th. That's Saturday from 9 to noon at the Skagit Extension facility. And then finally, received a letter from Arbor Day Foundation, and on behalf of Arbor Day Foundation, they're thrilled to congratulate Anacortes on earning recognition 2023 as Tree City USA. There's more in the letter, but I think this is about our 24th year of that recognition. And then they close the letter with, "We are excited to celebrate your commitment to the people and trees of Anacortes." So that is it for me, and over to council. First on the list of reports is the Fiber Committee.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. McDougall.
The Fiber Committee met last Thursday, myself and Mr. Walters in attendance, along with the Fiber staff leadership. Quick report on the numbers. We are at about 2,330 customers connected to the network, which is actually very nearly 31% of the entire community is connected and turned on, which is fantastic. From a sign-ups perspective, we've got very nearly 49% of the community signed up to receive service. The team continues to knock out about, I think, 25, 30, 40 installations per month, so that number just keeps going up and up. The mayor mentioned Summit X is beginning construction here in early February on the kind of the last section of town, or the last sections, which are divided into kind of 4 main chunks. Basically, it looks like through 2024, it'll be H Avenue East and like 17th Avenue South, like finishing up all that infill. And then 2025 is kind of the rest of the unconstructed areas. Excuse me. A couple of other just quick items. Shout out to the GIS team for the support they provided in helping the team to update the check availability feature on the fiber website. Thank you very much, GIS. And also the department is working with City of Burlington, City Mount Vernon, where basically we're consuming so much bandwidth now. The service has got so many folks on it that we're having to upgrade to a physical 100 gigabit port on the router, which means we have to basically run 2 separate fibers to do the actual bi-directional at that kind of speed. At a reduced speed, you can just do it over 1 fiber. So a little dark fiber lease from those places, because that's where we connect out to the larger internet, is out at kind of Mount Vernon and Burlington. There's a couple spots out there. And that's what I have for now.
Yeah, I know there's a couple of us on the dais that are pretty excited about this next phase of fiber coming to our neighborhoods. All right, next up is housing. Any questions? All right, next up, 3B, Housing Affordability Community Services Committee.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Moulton.
Thank you. So last Thursday, we had a field trip for the HACS committee, and it was council members Walters, Cleland McGrath, myself, and Mr. Monrad as well was there. And we had a tour of their facility, which they have upgraded vastly from what I'm told, from what it had been prior to now. That's where there's a really big, beautiful food pantry where all our donations from the Red Bag Simple Gesture program go, and other donations. And we saw the layout where people who need food can go in and shop. And there's a fresh produce section, there's frozen food, there's some fresh baked bread. It's really lovely. And how that works for people was just really great to see. They're doing some after-school care there for some kids that are in their congregation, because they have a congregation and they do Sunday services. But they have a really big, nice meeting room with a beautiful view that nonprofits can rent out at no charge. And so I highly recommend, if you're looking for a place for your nonprofit group to meet, it's great. And also a very reasonable fee for other groups that are for-profit. But it's got a full kitchen, and it just was really fun to see this transformation that they've done. They have AA meetings there. I think they have 2 a day. And the new, I don't know what their title is, I want to call them captains, but Brett and LaShawn are just really motivated, and they're doing really good things in the community and working to expand their offerings and really integrate more with service providers in the area and strengthen those relationships. I've seen them at meetings at the county, and so it's really exciting because it's more of that linking services and helping to fill the gaps and communicating to avoid duplication of services. So it was really heartening. I think we all left feeling like, yes. So that was it.
Mayor Miller,
Mr. Young.
just have a question. I wasn't sure where you were speaking of that was doing all this fabulous stuff, so if you would say that again, I would be able to put it in my notes.
I'm sorry if I didn't say that this was the Salvation Army on 30th Street, and it's very conveniently located now near the roundabout. You can get to it quite easily from any direction, so, yeah.
Great, thank you. All right, next up, Public Works Committee.
Mayor Miller.
Ms. Moulton.
Thank you. The Public Works Committee met at 5 p.m. today. Councilmember Walters, Young, and myself, and Public Works Director Andy Rayum, and we chatted about the role of the committee and the it was kind of talking about our expectations of the committee. So it was sort of like a little bit of a relationship building, sort of clarification of our roles and what we expect from the committee, both as council members and as staff. And it was really interesting and very positive. And it was good to hear what the other two council members have to say. And we haven't done that in my recollection in the past, really, in any of the committees I've been on. So I found that to be very helpful and interesting, and a really good opportunity. The other thing we talked about was the current format of the Traffic Safety Committee, which has been in various incarnations over the years, from a meeting that the public could attend, so that occasionally could get a little bit contentious. I've been at one of those. And then a different incarnation at the Public Works at the Ops building. Anyway, we're trying to find the best way to do it for the most efficiency and the best way to communicate with, for our constituents to communicate with us and for decisions to be made. Because of course, committees only make recommendations, they don't make decisions, but what's the best way to do that? So that's a long way of saying we're gonna figure that out.
Yeah, appreciate that work, and with the help of Mayor Pro Tem, I know we can make sure the committees work for the betterment of the entire council. So thank you for that. Next up is Library Committee.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Fantini.
So the Library Committee met last Wednesday. It was Library Director Jeff Vogel and myself. It was my first Library Committee meeting, so I had lots of questions about how the funding for the library works, because there's a few different funding sources that are there, from the Friends of the Library to the Board of Trustees, all that. So that was helpful to hear about. A couple of things to cover. There's a lot of programming that goes on at the library. You know, we definitely see the big ticket items like Adventure Day, right? Great. But right now we've got, for all ages programming, there's 10 upcoming adult programs in April. And over 20 kid programs and weekly teen programs. So there's a lot going on at the library all the time. If you're interested, I have some personal favorites, but if you're interested in learning more about what's there, go to the library and sign up for their newsletter. They have a great newsletter that comes out that offers a lot of information on all of these programs. We also spoke a little bit about the teen area remodel. So the library is continuing to move forward with its potential teen area remodel. They're working with Underwood Associates here in town to come up with the right design for that, and the architectural plans are completed. Engineering and permitting, all done. So we're still waiting on the final cost estimate so we can provide information on whether or not the project is financially feasible for the Library Foundation to fund that before the project goes out to bid through the city contract process. We also spoke a bit about something that was very new to me, which is called the Skagit Library Consortium. So Skagit Libraries, excuse me, they've been working to expand their current library reciprocal agreement that allows Skagit residents working within the taxable jurisdictions of any library to get library cards at any Skagit library. So Burlington Library, La Conner Library, Central Skagit Library, and Upper Skagit Library have created a consortium to have a shared catalog and software and share and transport materials between the libraries, which is great because it opens us up to a whole nother bunch of books. So that's pretty awesome. Anacortes has been involved in the planning, but to join the consortium, we would need to migrate to the shared catalog software, which is a new software. The software catalog migration, I don't want to say too much about that because that will be something that comes before council for us all to discuss and talk about how we feel about that. But they're looking at that for the library's 2025 budget. And Director Vogel looks forward to coming and sharing the benefits of the Skagit Consortium with council at our budget retreat in June. And last, or actually two more things, summer reading. Library has some super fun reading programs in the works for summer. Performers include Salish Sea Kickoff at Washington Park, Field Day, Reptile Man, which apparently always draws hundreds of folks. Shannon Point Library Parking Lot, Ren Schultz, the Juggler, Raptors at Causland Park, and Friends of the Forest at Causland Park. And finally, in regards to staffing, the library is currently hiring for a part-time library assistant.
A lot of stuff going on at your library. Questions? Okay, next up is 3E, Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, Mr. Walters.
The Lodging Tax Advisory Committee met last Wednesday. We reviewed the events of our joint Port City meeting on the event venue. The committee was very interested in that because, as you all know, the plan is for lodging tax, which the committee will have to weigh in on to fund that event venue. We had two remaining applications for lodging tax funding from 2023. One was a proposal from the Majestic Hotel for a large tent in their parking lot. One was from the Parks Department for a large tent at the depot. The Majestic withdrew their application, and the committee voted to turn down the Parks Department funding for the tent at the depot. Then we did a brief theoretical modeling exercise on the lodging tax funding that will be available if we fund the event center with lodging tax. And that exercise yielded not very much except drove home the need to conserve the available funding so that we have the most choices that we can make once it comes time to make annual allocation for events. Today, we received a new application for a tent at the depot from the chamber for $50,000. And we'll be scheduling a meeting of the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee very soon so that we can get information from them, review the application, and then have a quick turnaround time on that application so that the chamber can make plans for their Beer on the Pier event.
All right, any other announcements, committee reports we may have missed?
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Young?
Just wanted to point out that the Economic Development Committee continues to press forward with work, talking to stakeholders in the community to sort of understand where we might want to go, some of the challenges that's already been here. I understand that in years past, under other administrations, there have been some work and reports to come out about the challenges in Anacortes, the opportunities in Anacortes. So I've been collecting those and reviewing them as we come up to our next meeting that we'll share with the rest of the committee as we look toward working with, hopefully, the university to be able to help us put our arms around where we want to go, how we want to get there, and then beyond that, once we get beyond that, will be when we begin to reach out to some of the stakeholders and figuring out how and where the questions and how we're going to go about looking at the challenges as well as the successes and figuring out where we want to go from here. All of that is to say that we're still definitely in the air, just getting our arms around it, but the truth of the matter is that we're making progress in a good way, and for those entities, organizations, groups that care about that, you will be reached out to, and then you will also be at the table. So we're going to figure all this out, but I just wanted to sort of give you an update. I've had some meetings during the week just to understand everyone's position so we can get our arms around it. So thank you.
Other announcements or committee reports?
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
Thank you. This morning I attended a class over at the Emergency Operations Center put on by Skagit County, and it was for a National Incident Management System, and it was specifically geared toward elected officials and what our role will be in the event that some kind of incident happens and how we can best help and how to communicate with the center. And it was great because there were other elected officials there, so county commissioners, the new mayor of Mount Vernon, and people from Cedar Woolley, and it just was really informative. And there's so much to know and learn, and I'll never learn it all, but it gave me a good kind of a foundational understanding of how things will work and how that communication will work in those kind of events and how I can be helpful. So I found it was really valuable, and the instructor was from Snohomish County, and he did a really good job. He was really engaging. So just wanted to mention that.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mayor Miller, if I could add one more thing.
Mr. Young.
Thank you, sir. Just wanted to say that Community Action had their banquet this past weekend, and it was absolutely fabulous in the sense that Community Action really works toward addressing the needs of a community. And, you know, we already know that we have a lot of need, and, you know, more often than not enough resources. So it was just a wonderful thing to have a packed audience. I saw, of course, council members were there, Cleland McGrath, Walters, as well as Ms. Moulton and myself. But it was just a wonderful event. And as they begin to do the work that they are doing here in Anacortes, I look forward to seeing more of them. And if you don't know where they are, they're in the Chamber building where the Chamber of Commerce is. And so, you know, they're beginning their work to reach out in a variety of fashions. So I just wanted you to know and look forward to the help that will come in to help not only the Family Center, but all those people that the Salvation Army and others serve. Thank you.
All right, ready to move on to public comment. Item number 4. This is an opportunity for any member of the public that wishes to address the council on anything that's not on our agenda tonight. So if you're here to talk about 12th Street and Commercial Avenue intersection, you can wait until then, but I've got a few folks signed up for other topics. But you sign up, you get to go first. So I have Linnea McCord up first. Topic is Habitat for Humanity. And 3 minutes, but we won't start the timer till you start talking. We'll let you get set up and turn the microphone on, and again, state your name and the city you live in for the record, please. And oh, you've got something to show. There we go.
Okay, thank you. Linnea McCord, Anacortes. Well, I was very happy that last week the members of the planning committee of Anacortes, in terms of short-term rentals, said we cannot take into account some residents who might want short-term rentals. We must consider all the residents in case it was not good for the community. I was glad to hear that. And then in the movie theater lease, we cannot give away Anacortes public land to explain why the planning committee was unwilling to grant even a reasonable amendment to the theater lease. So, let's see, how do we do this? Worked last time. Is that it? And now do it? Okay, so when it comes to Habitat for Humanity, it's important to know where it's coming from. It's coming from the World Economic Forum. It's not coming from the state of Washington. It's not coming from the federal government. It's coming from the World Economic Forum. And the Habitat for Humanity is working closely with the World Economic Forum. And that means we're talking about affordable housing and climate change. You're going to hear that a lot this year. A lot of money is involved in this. Housing and climate change come from the self-appointed World Economic Forum global elites who want the U.S. and all nations to join under one world government, aka dictatorship. It's dominated and controlled by giant multinational corporations, billionaires and their foundations, and governments who work on behalf of the WEF, not the people in their own nations. And this chart shows the energy milestones the World Economic Forum has for achieving net zero emissions by 2050. It's their idea. It's not our idea. Stanford estimates it'll be costing $4 trillion a year for 30 years, and more than $110 trillion. So, who are they? You will own nothing and be happy by 2030. They took that down off their website. They were surprised to find out people didn't agree with it, and there was backlash. So what will you own? Nothing. You won't own a house, a car, a business, stocks, your life? Nothing. More to come. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have next signed up is Judy Billings, and the topic is DEI. Again, state your name and city.
Judy Billings, Anacortes. First of all, I'd like to thank Anthony and TJ for your common sense business approach last week to the theater. I'm sorry that that didn't work out. My main topic is DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion training. The philosophy of DEI removes all merit from society and replaces it with a cult of perceived oppression, academic prowess, mental drive, personal success, inherent intelligence, or toughness. None of these things matter anymore when it comes to college admissions, corporate employment, municipal job access, or political promotion. All that has mattered for a decade is skin color, gender, sexual orientation, and how much a person's minority status raises the ESG score of a particular institution. DEI goes far beyond the notion of affirmative action. Does affirmative action still lead to unqualified hires? Yes, it does. DEI takes the problem to a whole new level by incentivizing the erasure of merit as a social construct. DEI demonizes the concept of merit as evil and racist. This leads to one thing: the saturation of jobs and positions with people that represent the lowest common denominator. The woke corporations that engage in DEI are seeing their companies decline. Go woke, go broke. Most people want the most qualified surgeon, airline pilot, etc. Who cares what color a person is? This practice is bad for minorities. Now everyone wonders, did you get the job because you're qualified or a DEI hire? The bottom line is that merit is the only reasonable way to run a society. In other words, DEI, didn't earn it, is a destroyer of our society. I'm requesting that you don't spend our tax dollars on forcing our city employees to undergo this hideous ideological training. This training is anti-American. The purpose is to destroy the culture of the U.S. Meritocracy is the only way to success. If you want to have a training for city employees, teach them how to earn it. Teach them how to be the best they can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I've got Sally Fleming, Habitat for Humanity is the topic.
Am I on? Am I on?
I think I think you're on now.
Right. It, I am Sally Fleming. I live here in Anacortes. I want to start out by saying that I totally agree with the people who have spoken before me about this new project, and I have some concerns to add. First of all is the safety of the walking community. It is a community of many walkers, elderly, wheelchairs, skateboards, young, old, basketball players, whatever. This project is adding, at least 20 to 30 more individuals to take part in this. I happen to live with the alley that we were talking about, having the traffic and the parking and so forth in my backyard. And then on my side yard, you will find that I have the Kansas Street Speedway, which connects West 3rd Street with those that are up on the hillside on Rock Ridge. And folks, let me tell you, that is a speedway. My second point is that about a month ago, Mr. Walters wrote us a very gracious note and agreed that there would be a council meeting, council with Habitat, and we have not heard when that meeting is scheduled or if it's going to take part or whatever. My concern is that we have forgotten about the neighbors. I realized, and reading in the back information, that the League of Women Voters were there and knew about the meeting, but no neighbors. How do we all get elected to our positions in this day and age if we don't send out information to the neighbors? I'm sure that information is very readily available in our tax department, has that right on call because I did get my tax bill right on time. So my third point is that I really would welcome a site visit of everyone that is going to have an opportunity to vote on this project. It is not our concern that this project should be totally forgotten, but the size and the scope of 5 houses, whatever you call them, cottage houses, small homes, whatever, is just too much for the neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. All right, next up is Suzanne Rohner, and topic is Anacortes Cinema.
Thank you for this opportunity. I would like to comment on action taken last week concerning the Anacortes Cinema. I had a lot of questions on it. I listened to the video again. I even went and spoke to the city attorney. It was a very confusing topic, and I was very disappointed that it did not pass. But in a nutshell, the current tenant of the theater owns the building, leases the land from the city. The lease will expire in 2026. The owner wants to sell the building and has a buyer. However, there's a stipulation in the lease that the leasee have 5 years of experience in movie theater operations. The potential buyer does not satisfy this requirement, and the council was asked to amend the lease to allow a subleasee to satisfy the requirement. Of note, there are 4 5-year extensions on the lease, which could allow the theater to remain in operation on that land until 2036. At the meeting, there were 3 members present. There were 6 members present. 3 members expressed interest in doing that, some enthusiastically. 3 members were very concerned about the risk this posed for the city, that it was just too risky to do this. It's kicking the can down the road. But when it came time to vote, only 2 members voted in support of it, and instead of 3 voting yes, only 2 voted yes. So during the meeting, the mayor posed the question, does the proposed change in the lease harm or benefit the city, or is it neutral? And the answer to that question depends on who you ask. If the lease had been amended, the best case scenario would be that Anacortes would have a theater for another 22 years. Worst case scenario for the present owner or any future owner would be the business would fail, the owner would abandon the building, taking what improvements they could, and the city would regain control of the building on land that they own. And that could be the worst case scenario, whether the amendment was passed or not. And so it suddenly occurred to me that maybe the risk that council members were concerned about is not the risk that the theater would fail, but the risk that the theater would succeed. The council has clearly stated that their intention is to fill the downtown corridor with multi-level, multi-family housing. So perhaps by refusing to amend the lease agreement, which would have allowed the theater to potentially occupy that land for an additional 22 years, the council is betting on gaining control of that land sooner. So I'm asking the council, what are your plans for that land? Are you planning to build something on that? Have you had discussion with developers, conversations in the hall, a wink and a nod at the water cooler, whispers in the hallway? I think we need to know what your plans are. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Mike is the first name. Sorry, I'm having trouble. Is it Wagner? Wagner? But that's why we make. That's why we have you state your name, because I probably will butcher it. And subject is West Fifth Street project.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Thank you for your time again tonight. I was here last week, and I'm a little more organized this week, but just wanted to come up again and voice my opposition to the West Fifth project. I haven't had a chance to follow up with a couple council members. Mr. Walters did just email me today, and I appreciate his email. I'll make sure to follow up with him, and I appreciate you responding to me. The point I want to just say again tonight was currently I believe there's at least a dozen, maybe 24 families that are very concerned and opposed to this project, or at least the current version of it, maybe with some modifications. So we're just hoping to keep our names out there so we can find a way to facilitate some kind of community meeting with the group of you individuals or the planning committee prior to any agreement or moving forward with Habitat for Humanity. If we could find a way just to make sure all these neighbors that are concerned can gather that information and share that with you in some kind of form, and we'd really appreciate it if somebody would put forth a motion during the council meeting at some point in the next couple of weeks before anything goes forward as far as an ongoing lease with this. If I could just reiterate that, and I apologize for taking up your time, but we just want to make sure that the council knows that there's at least, like I said, a dozen or 24 families that are really concerned about the current version. Thank you for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And again, I'll reiterate that the zoning is what it is, and it's R2A, I think. And then and the uniqueness about that is it's city-owned land, so any kind of lease arrangement would have to be approved by the council. All right, I don't have anybody else signed up. Was there any? Okay. All right, we got. I see 3 hands shot up. So go ahead. Yeah, come on up. And I know you've been here before, but you can state your name and city.
Okay, sure. My name is Shua Mu, and I live in Anacortes. And my comments are specific to Council Member Mr. Waters' response to me last week regarding the West 5th Street housing units with Habitat for Humanity. In regards of the due diligence and funding, Mr. Waters said the project will not receive any city funding, and the Habitat for Humanity of Skagit County would fund and manage the project. Well, this is not that simple. And I see Mr. Fantini on the stage, and you work for a bank. We know that the public land on West 5th Street is assessed at $300,000, and it's supposed to be leased to Habitat for Humanity for $1 a year for 200 years. And 200 years is a long time, and long enough for the humans to have 10 generations. And the net present value for $1 a year cash flow with a discount rate, let's just say 4%, that's the long-term bond rate. And that is under $2. So that qualifies as gifting, commented by a resident a couple of weeks ago. So the impact on the city's balance sheet is we no longer have a real asset with value increasing, appreciating over time. Instead, we have $1 a year leased income for 200 years. Remember, 200 years ago, slavery was legal, and the Civil War not even started. And additionally, a resident challenged the legality of gifting this land by City of Anacortes. She articulated two-part tests of a Washington state law, and they explained why the city's gifting public land violates Washington Constitution. So, what are the legal liabilities and the financial exposure if this Washington State Constitution, Article 8, Section 8, prevails in a court of law? Lastly, I couldn't find from public domain that the Habitat for Humanity of Skagit County is in or has entered property management space. And as for the rationale of 5 units versus 2 units on this land that's listed for 2 building sites on the assessor's website, Council member Mr. Waters responded, the city proposed 5 units on the property to make the most progress toward improving housing affordability and availability in Anacortes. So, do we think 3 units will lower the house price and will move the dial on the mortgage rates? Likely, no.
Thank you. Time's up. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, I got 2 more I saw. Come on up. Yeah, we use a 3-minute time limit to respect everybody's time.
Pat Gardner, Anacortes, Mayor, Council members, good evening. What I'm here about, and I wasn't planning to speak, we had a bowling alley. We lost that. I don't know all the particulars because I don't remember what all went on. And that was an indoor event. We had, winters and a place for people to go in the winter for sports or, bowling, lunch, snacks, whatever. And then we have a theater that's nice to go to in the winter when the weather's inclement and stuff. And if we lose the theater, we've already lost the bowling alley. If we lose the theater, we're not going to have anything indoor for adults or children, teenage, anybody in the community to go to, except hang around the streets, break car windows at night or whatever. But we just don't have anything. And if we lose the theater, it's out. And so I'd like to keep that going the best we can, whatever the legalities are. But thank you.
Thank you. Okay, in the back. Yep, I saw you.
Hi, Becky Mifflin. I live in Anacortes. I'm strong against the city's insistence that Habitat build 5 single houses on the West 5th Street parcel. A better suited location would be on O Avenue where the cinema currently resides. Nancy Saunders leases the property from the city and has advised the American the theater has never been profitable. To make money, she's considering the building's demolishment, paying the remainder of the lease through 2026. Councilman Walters has stated the location is too small for these 1,200-foot houses. However, with the inclusion of the existing parking lot, that comes to 23,516 square feet. That size lot is enough to build 7 houses, which will allow for assisting even more people with housing. I stated at the meeting last week that Habitat would be better off building houses closer to town, which would allow them to be near the bus line, and they could possibly walk to work. This is in comparison to the parcel on West 5th Street, which only has 16,000 square feet instead of the 23,500 square feet on Oaks Avenue. I will close by asking that we not vote to simply tuck people away somewhere, as old saying goes, out of sight, out of mind, which appears to be exactly what the city wants. Thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? We'll get to the 12th and commercial, but anybody else that's not on the agenda that wants to address the council? Okay.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Fantini?
I just wanted to quickly bring up one thing. There seems to be a lot of interest here and has been at several meetings for the Habitat for Humanity project. I appreciate you pointing out that it is zoned a certain way for R2A, so there's only so many things that private developers, whatnot can do, but I also appreciate you mentioning the distinction of how this is city-owned land and that we do have the ability as a council to create requirements, amendments to any lease that would be separate from that exact zoning. So I appreciate that. And the last thing I wanted to say is this is a topic that there seems to be a lot of care from many of the neighbors, some who have not yet been here but have stopped by my house. And I just want to make sure that, again, before we were to put this on to vote on it, that maybe we have more than 1 week notice that it's going to be, because I know there's some people whose schedules can't flex that quickly and would want to be here for that. So I just wanted to say that.
Great, thank you. Okay, next up is our consent agenda, items 5A through E.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters.
Before we get to the consent agenda, I just want to say I think everybody is in agreement on that. I don't think that we have data from Habitat as to what their state of their due diligence is. We will reach out and see where they are with that project. But I expect that everyone up here, head nod, I think is on board with providing ample opportunity for public comment before we take action. Keeping in mind, we've taken no action so far. We haven't approved a lease, we haven't approved any permits, anything like that. Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Walters, a second by Mr. McDougall to approve the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're on to other business, item 6A, and 6A is alternative response team, and I think Mr. Monrad, a community paramedic, is going to just come right up, and I'll cut Chief Harris out of this. No, I'm happy he's here, but he doesn't.
He
have
said
to
that I was a big boy and I could introduce myself.
Introduce yourself. Well, welcome.
The next feat will be figuring out how to get my.
Yeah. See, because this is usually when I drag things out to help you get your presentation set up.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor, Council, Chief, members of the viewing audience. I'm Steve Monrad. I'm the community paramedic with the Anacortes Fire Department. And I have, why don't you introduce yourself?
There you go.
Hi, I'm Ashley Wick from Anacortes Family Center, and I am the resource and care coordinator.
All right, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I wanted to give you a update on the fire department's community paramedic program, as well as the city's alternative response team that we formed last year. I believe you've already received my annual report that I did for 2023. A lot of this information is straight out of that, so I won't take too long, only 90 minutes or so to get through this. So.
We do have time limits for the presentations as well.
So if I see the clock come up here, I'll start talking. Okay, so the community paramedic program with the Anacortes Fire Department is implemented January 1 of 2021, so we're 3 years into this just about. With an initial goal of reducing 911 calls for repeat callers, reduce emergency department visits, as well as generally just to improve quality of life for vulnerable community members. This position, my position with the fire department, is funded in partnership with Island Health. And to date, since we've launched the program, I have enrolled 134 patients into this program. In 2023, 67 were enrolled, and year to date, we're up to 24 already. So those are folks that I'm seeing in my capacity with the fire department based on what sort of needs they have. And this slide here just kind of breaks down the categories of the patient's needs. If you notice the math doesn't add up, that's because people fit into at least one category. Some might hit multiple boxes there. This was no real surprise here in our community. A majority of the folks that I'm working with in the community paramedic program are in the aging disabled, followed by folks with complex medical needs. And you can see the breakdown as with the rest of the folks there. And I think this is just, it's the same numbers, but is a good depiction to kind of show the hierarchy of the issues that folks are seeking help from this program with. Again, no big surprises in our community with the demographics that we have. I've also kept track of where I get the referrals from. And it's been pretty consistent that I get most of my referrals for the patients that I see from the Anacortes Fire Department crews. And in the past, when we started this program, we had as you look down on this graph here, the high utilizer, that was a bigger number. Mm-hmm. And the reason why that's down to 0 is because our folks have been very keen at being proactive, and sometimes they'll refer people to me that it's their first 911 call ever, and they're just concerned about their living situation or the care they're receiving at home, so they send me a referral. So majority comes from our crews at Anacortes Fire, followed by Island Health. And from Island, I get referrals from the emergency department, which is a majority, from their primary care clinics, and also from care management. So somebody that's spent some time in the hospital and they're about to be discharged, those social workers might reach out to me to make sure that those folks are prepared to go home and their home setting is suitable. Otherwise, I get referrals from other public entities and public partners, and some come from individuals referring themselves or their family. And again, that's all the same figures there, just in a pie chart, because who doesn't like pie charts? Again, one of the focuses of this program was to reduce repeat 911 callers. So this is looking at 67 patients enrolled in 2023. Prior to their enrollment in the program, we had 114 EMS calls just in that cohort of patients. After working with them for a while, that group had their calls were 51. So altogether, that was a 55% reduction in their repeat 911 calls. And that's been pretty consistent since we've started this. That's been a pretty consistent figure. And after we started this, I kind of felt like a big part of my job was going to be just what I discussed, was dealing with repeat 911 callers and fall prevention and helping people with chronic medical conditions. But as we started this program, and everybody I know that also was involved in starting a community paramedic program, they told me that you're going to start down a path and you're going to realize that there's a community need somewhere else, so you're going to make a turn. And that's exactly what we did with forming this alternative response team, which is a team that we formed back in January of 2023 that we initially funded through a grant from the Association of Washington Cities. And it is a partnership with the Anacortes Fire Department, the Anacortes Police Department, and the Anacortes Family Center, and that's why Ashley's here. I told her, I gave her permission if she needs to talk to just push me out of the way and take
I'm
over
sure
the
she
mic.
will.
She will, yeah. So this team is, again, we started back in 2023. Police Department, Fire Department, and the Family Center doing weekly community outreach, working with unhoused folks in the community, as well as people who may be housed but have needs that we're able to help address. The team members that are pretty consistent are myself and Ashley. Officer Nybo, she's code enforcement, parking, and animal control. And then usually we have a day shift police department sergeant or corporal or a patrolman, depending on their staffing. So for the most part, we have a pretty consistent team with a few people that kind of rotate in and out. But we had a couple snapshots of our team. Thought we'd share. So the things we do, we provide community outreach. Again, we have a weekly team meeting where we do a team huddle and help each other case conference and case manage folks that we're working with, whether they're housed or unhoused or what other issues they might be dealing with. Provide case management, and that's lion's share of the work that Ashley does with the folks that we're helping. The community paramedicine services, that's of course me. And then one component of our team is, of course, enforcement with the police department. So in 2023, this team, and again, Ashley did a lion's share of this work, but served 206 clients in 2023. And that was to provide help with housing, substance use, behavioral health issues, and health care. Some of the case management services that Ashley helps with, she helps with the motel voucher program. We provide gas and grocery gift cards. We've provided bus passes, clothing, laundry vouchers, transportation, whether that's setting someone up with a bus ticket to get home or a train ticket to get home out of state, or we've actually loaded people up in the car to transport them to treatment or other services because there's no other service to provide that. A big barrier for folks sometimes is not having an ID, and Ashley's able to help a lot of people to get birth certificates, ID cards, social security cards. Ashley spends a lot of time with helping folks to gain employment with job applications and resumes, and also helps setting folks up with health insurance. Do you want to add anything to that?
Come all the way up to the microphone, Ashley.
Okay, speaking to the microphone. So with Motel Voucher, Nina and I are really close partners with that, so I just want to make sure that I thank her because her and I have learned how to work really well together and been able to benefit a lot of people in the community through that program. Also, St. Mary's or St. Vincent de Paul has been a huge help with the laundry vouchers and has been able to give a lot of the citizens in our community the opportunity to have clean clothes for their job interviews. I mean, who wants to go to an interview and have clothes that are dirty from months and not being able to shower and stuff? So I just want to thank them. Also, when it comes to health insurance, we have a partnership with Washington Connections, and they've been able to provide a lot of help with the health insurance.
I guess I needed to keep pushing the button here, but Ashley also helps folks get set up with education, whether that's alternative school or even get into college. And Oh, and why don't you talk about this one, Ashley?
Also, Anacortes Family Center has a new partnership with the Anacortes School District and the McKinney-Vento program, and Pat Carlson and Danielle Vincent are the ones that help with the McKinney-Vento families, which are the families that are considered imminently homeless, and there is a significant amount of families in our school district that are homeless. So being able to connect those families with the services, or just even letting them know that there's services available, has been a big deal in 2023, and has been able to help a lot of families. And we have a new shower room at Anacortes Family Center. Dustin Johnson and myself were able to write up a contract so that clients can come in by appointment, and they can have a room all to themselves. They have a 30-minute shower with a 10-minute warning. All of the hygiene products, clean clothing, everything's provided for them, so they can come in, shower, and then usually we have lots of snacks, coffee, whatever they want. And that's also proven to be a really great opportunity to sit down with clients and have that one-on-one kind of close case management time with them, especially after they feel a lot better after taking a shower.
So not only are we helping people out in the community, but also some of these folks have pets and animals that are along with them. And we're really fortunate that Officer Nybo with the police department being animal control, she has some resources to help with pets. So she's been able to provide free dog and cat food from the resources that the Anacortes Police Department has, and the Humane Society, Salvation Army. She's also able to refer people to low-cost spay and neuter programs for their pets, and also assistance with routine veterinary care, covering the cost through SANE, the Skagit Animals in Need. And if need be, she's also been able to help folks rehome their pets if they decide to surrender them. And in general, just she helps to problem solve any sort of pet-related issues, and just provides pet-related case management. It's been really, really beneficial. On the enforcement side, that's something that Ashley and I don't get involved with. We leave that to the police department. We step aside. That is not in our wheelhouse. But just a few statistics on that. In 2023, the police department issued 110 correction notices or warnings for parking. 11 parking infractions were issued by the police department. Over 50 different vehicles were contacted, and 8 RVs were impounded at the city lot in 2023. We've got a couple real quick case studies that I think are some real successes that this program saw last year. And I truly believe the successes that we have are the result of the partnerships that we've established, not only within our departments in the city and the Family Center, but community-wide with other community partners. The first one is a gentleman in his 40s. He has a history of behavioral health issues, and he lived in his car for nearly 5 years. Lived in one spot on the side of the street for probably 2 or 3 years, and 3 years in the same spot. Through a lot of perseverance and case management and rapport building, Ashley was very instrumental in him being able to transition to Cascade Landing Apartments, where he has his own apartment and is doing really well. You want to add?
And it's really cool because that client now works 3 days a week here in town at a motel doing lawn maintenance, and I see him, everyone sees him riding his bike over the bridge. He doesn't take the bus, he only rides his bike 3 days a week, back and forth, and he's learned how to cook. He makes pizzas, he makes omelets. Cooking has like completely become his thing. And when we saw him a couple weeks ago, he was so excited to see us. His whole face lit up, and he went from being pretty feral, to say the least. He was not, you couldn't really approach him. He was he was unapproachable. And so to have him go from not being able to enter a doorway to a public dwelling, not being able to engage with just the community, that now he's working within the community, he's learning how to cook, and it's really such a blessing. It's really, really cool to see.
The second case is actually another gentleman in his 40s. This is a gentleman who has a severe history of both physical and mental disabilities. Had been living in a local motel for 8 years with his mother, who was his primary caregiver and pretty much sole companion. He rarely left the room in that 8-year time. He had a father who he was estranged from. He hadn't seen his father in that entire time. Unfortunately, his mother died suddenly and literally in front of him. So here he is, he's left alone, and she really helped to take care of him. And he was referred to me by the crews of the Anacortes Fire. So I was able to go touch base with him. He, again, hadn't been out of the room rarely, hadn't seen a doctor for several years. We brought Ashley in. She was able to help start the process to get him set up with housing. Through our partnership with Island Health, I was able to get him set up with a primary care physician. Got him an appointment the next week. Got him established with health care. Ashley was able to complete a Section 8 voucher and started the search to find him an apartment. What else? It was a long process. He had a cat who was his pretty much sole companion. The cat was not well. Officer Nybo was able to come in, provide some resources, got the cat mended up and happy and healthy and back home to him. Got him set up with Meals on Wheels, got him set up with clothing and hygiene assistance. Leading up to moving day, we had help from Community Action of Skagit County. We had help from the Mobile Crisis Outreach Team. Who else? It truly took a village. And it was an 8-month process from start to finish, where he got to move into his very own newly renovated apartment. And through the connection that Ashley was able to make, he was greeted by his dad. Yeah.
So the night before he moved in, I called his dad and I asked if he'd be able to meet me the night before moving day. And his dad agreed, and we sat in the conference room of Anacortes Family Center for about an hour and a half. And his dad decided that he was going to fully furnish his son's new apartment, and his son had no idea that when we got there with the moving trucks and everything, that his dad was going to be waiting there for him, and that the whole place knew everything, new kitchen stuff, new bed. And I think just seeing the look on his face when his dad was there after not seeing him for 8 years, and just everything that his dad did for him, was one of those moments that's just like, there's no words. It was just so incredible. I have a picture of them, and they both had canes. They both like kind of mirrored each other, and they just had the biggest smiles on their face, and it was really an incredible moment. And it was really a result of what all the partnerships can do when everyone does what they're supposed to do, with the heart and the passion that you're supposed to do it with. So it was really, really an incredible win for everyone.
All right. And so with that,
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, you should end on that. That's a
I'm
good
not
way
going to try to.
So luckily, I get to go first because I know there's going to be a lot of council members that want to thank you
Yeah.
all for doing the great work. But I can't thank Ashley, you, and Nina for the partnership that we've had. I feel so fortunate, not only Steve, to have you in this unique position to be the one to start this and take the turn. I remember sitting in your office, you had 3 or 4 names written up there, and just trying to figure out which direction this is going to go. And it's gone in the direction that exactly what we were hoping it would go in, with the reduction in 911 calls. And I got to put in a plug for Island Health for financing this, because they recognize the massive savings of not having somebody come into the ER all the time, not to mention the 911 calls. But also, again, I want to publicly thank Ashley and Nina also, just because you were able to develop the level of trust with some of the folks that, what I referred to, I know I get in trouble for saying it, as hard cases. And you were able to make that connection, and they were able to get on a better trajectory, and it's the reason why we don't have folks living on T Avenue. I know, we have folks in trying positions now, but we don't have that particular problem. So, okay, with that,
And absolutely, I appreciate both of you giving the shout out to Nina, because she was kind of the pioneer, before this team was even really officially formed. But yeah, she was out there doing the work out on the street.
All right, now I'll let council give their kudos.
All right.
Mr. Young.
Thank you. This is proof positive of an incredible lift. An incredible lift for the community, an incredible lift for people whom sometimes feel left behind, and the hope that comes when you have someone willing to reach out to you where you are and then try to find that common thread, and going far beyond what can be a commodity, a chore, and exuding a level of compassion that will warm hearts. And I think that you guys have demonstrated that in an incredible depth. And personally, I can't begin to thank you for the work that you do. I know it's not always easy. I know the challenges when we come as a society and when we talk about cost. What does it cost? And then also, what is the benefit? And so, those are the things we grapple with when you have limited budgets in this whole process. So what I wanted to say to each of you, and also the team, is, I am a fan, and I am a supporter beyond my work here, public service as a council member, but, I plan to do a little bit more leaping in, with my checkbook too. It's not that abundant, but it's good. But what I'm saying to you is, because my spouse is in medicine, I understand the challenge that it was on the hospital, the dings that it takes for these calls and all of the work that goes in, and there's a cost associated with that. What I'd love to hear just a little bit more about sometimes too is when you talk about the numbers and the reduction, let's also talk about what that cost equates to, because it's so important that we as a society have that point in mind. Because, just to think that, you're reducing 50% by so many people, in a 365-day year, that doesn't always equate out to, whatever that number is. But when you also equate the dollar consequence that we pay anyway, without this, I think it translates this effort to even higher. And it makes that those people that we have within our community that are willing to also step up with their dollars of compassion to help. It makes your job hopefully easier, and it makes the people in our job as we look at the issues that we're facing, because it comes before all of us. We pay one way or the other. We pay when they come to the ER. We pay with the police. We pay, with the work we have to do. We pay. how do we begin to address it? And I think that this is some of the solution that we need, but I would love to hear a little bit more when we equate those numbers, tangibly put it over there where we're making those savings. And I think that that will even be louder than the wonderful work that you're already doing. So thank you.
Any questions, comments? More?
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters?
I also want to extend my thanks. I think that your team really has been a breakthrough in this space. There's certainly a lot more work to be done, and I think every time we talk about the work that you have done in rescuing people, really effectively rescuing people off the street, it is also useful to talk about the need to keep people from falling into this situation to begin with. And there are certainly lots of barriers in the way of people obtaining and retaining housing, and that is what it comes down to. Certainly there are additional needs as well. There are seniors who can lose their housing, and some of the people that you originated this program for are those people, people that have or could or would lose their housing at a fairly old age, which you might not anticipate, but does happen. So there's so much more to be done here, but we have substantially benefited from you two, your work on this project and in this space. We have a lot of debt to you.
All right, anybody else?
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton?
Yes, I just want to second that and add on just a little bit. I've seen you two at work. The HACS committee has gone down to T Avenue and seen the work done there firsthand, and we can see the results of it. And your patience and your care and the time that it takes, that first case study, I'm very familiar with that person, and to see the difference that you've made in his life and the lives of the people around him by extension is giant. I so admire you for what you do and the care and compassion with which you do it. So thank you so much. I hope we can just continue this program as long as it's needed.
Anybody else?
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Fantini and then Ms. Cleveland McGrath.
I just also want to echo everyone's sentiment of thanks for the work that you're doing for this stressed part of our population. I also want to thank the rest of council for support. I wasn't on the council when this came before it or anything, and council very enthusiastically has supported this program, and I just think that thank you for that as well. I'm also very familiar with the first gentleman, your first case study. I know he teaches classes up at the senior center, and I get to see him on a pretty regular basis, and I can't begin to tell you the amount of impact that you had on his life. We can really look at the reduced call numbers, and that's great. And we can look at the budget savings, and that's great. But I think, to me personally, the single most important effect that happens is your ability to provide connection for people who maybe don't normally have it. Seniors who might be a little more isolated, folks who've struggled with mental disabilities, and that amount of connection, you restore dignity to people at times when they might not feel that. And I cannot thank you enough. Like the shower room. What a way to give a simple comfort and just a source of dignity to someone. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and I look forward to doing my part to support you.
Ms. Cleveland McGrath?
I concur with everyone who's already spoken. I just want to say that the fact that council and our partnerships were able to help fund this is great, but it's really the individuals, the two of you and Nina, and then all of your support folks like Officer Nybo,
that have the personality and joy, I think it really shows that it's not just if you're qualified, but it's also if you know how to work well with others and build. And that was abundantly clear the time I've spent with you. I get a voicemail message from you guys and you sound like you're having a way better time than I've had all week. I mean, it's really special, and that's why you guys have connected so well. And I also just from a numbers perspective, you know, when you talk about that 55% in reduction in repeat callers, if we have EMS out on a call with those folks, someone like that, it means that you may not, the general public may not get a response in a timely manner. So it's important to address these individual folks, but it also has a direct impact when you are calling 911, the general public, that there are more chances that they will be available to respond to you quickly. The final thing I would say, you mentioned pivoting, but from the alternative response team to or community paramedic to alternative response. And I just want to say, I think that this is a really important program that needs to continue, and we need to, I agree, evolve it where the need goes, but that I, at least as one individual on council, want to support that as if you can keep coming back with this kind of information and intervening before you get multiple calls from each person is super important. And then finally, having you guys there as North Star is developed with the county is really important, so that we have good firsthand knowledge of how our community needs to function when dealing with those issues. So thank you for also representing Anacortes in that planning process.
Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you again. Great presentation.
Thank you.
All right. We are on to item 6B. This is 12th Street and Commercial Avenue intersection, Complete Streets, Phase 1. And this is a discussion with some action requested from council, and it's also open for members of the public that wish to comment on this item. Mr. Rayum, did I give you enough time to set up?
I was lollygagging back there. Sorry about that. Mayor, Council, Andy Rayum, Public Works Director. I am opening up a very detailed presentation here. That's fine. You guys can see it okay?
Yeah.
Looks horrible, though. So I did prepare some comments, so I'm just going to read them. I'm sorry, it's annoying, but I do want to go through real quick and just give you one thing that I was surprised about, actually, just the mayor brought to my attention. This has come before the council a few times. This is the history of this project before council. The first time was in September of 2019, and then in 2020 and 2021 and 23, and then as of recently, we've discussed it twice this year so far. So here we are today.
And I don't even think that captures all of the times it was brought before council. There's other things in there as well, but we got a good chunk of them.
Yeah. Anyhow, I was just surprised that we've grappled with this question for some time. So we're still grappling with it. So I'm just going to read this, and then we'll get back to the slides here. But in August 2023, City Council confirmed to proceed to 30% design of a roundabout at the intersection of 12th and Commercial. Since then, Alta, our consultants, has been working on the design of the roundabout at 12th and road improvements along Commercial from 11th to 13th Street. The project is funded by a few, I'm just going to list these out real quick. Sandy Williams Connecting Washington Communities at $1.5 million for construction. Washington Bike and Pedestrian Grant, $1.1 million for design and construction. Transportation Improvement Board, $950,000 for design and construction. And the remaining $1.45 million in funding comes from various city accounts, including Transportation Benefit District, sidewalk funds, stormwater funds, and real estate excise tax. The total project cost is estimated around $5 million in 2019 dollars. 2019, the year 2019 is when the estimate was done, so it's more now. And that $5 million does not include land acquisition. The city has spent so far $465,000, including $355,000 in grants and $109,000 in city funds. And again, we're at 30% design. In consultation with Alta, the design firm designing the intersection felt like if we switch gears now, we cannot finish the design of a signalized intersection this summer. Alta estimates it will take 15 to 17 months to have construction bid documents ready for a signalized intersection. This is important because the Transportation Improvement Board, who is funding $950,000 in grants, basically put the gauntlet down and said you have till the end of summer to have a plan and a financing strategy for the project. WashDOT has granted $2.6 million. This is just rolling up the numbers I gave you earlier. And I actually have a slide too, so sorry, there's a lot of numbers involved with this. $2.6 million towards the project from WashDOT. And talking with WashDOT, the city will need to submit a letter expressing our intent to change the scope and timeline of the project. Approval of the continued grant funding will be contingent on WashDOT's approval of the city's change in proposed scope and schedule. In other words, we are rather likely to have the change in scope and schedule accepted, but we do run a chance that WashDOT, there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees that WashDOT will continue to fund the project. But in talking with them, it sounded pretty positive. Like they're willing to work with us. They want it to be a successful project. Alta, the design, is in very ballpark numbers, estimates the construction of a roundabout would cost more than a signalized intersection. Alta also confirmed or informed the city that a signalized intersection could be accomplished in the right-of-way we currently have, but there is a slight chance the city would still require some small pieces of neighboring property. Every effort would be made, obviously, to avoid land acquisition to move forward with a signalized intersection. Changing it to a signalized intersection will cost more for design, obviously, because we're at 30% design of a roundabout. But the work today would not be totally a loss. And that is that. And so the last two slides I have, this is just kind of laying out the finances to date. This is the schematic, I guess, of the roundabout. Actually, this is the design of the roundabout. And then the other alternative, which we've kind of gone back, we've considered and then considered the roundabout, is this one. This one, the wording is upside down, just so the orientation is the same, where you have Safeway kind of at the bottom of the page, and then you have, I think I've got a cursor, don't I? No, I don't. Oh, yeah, I do. This is the intersection, 12th and Commercial right here. So this is the roundabout. This is the intersection. That is my presentation.
Okay, Mr. Walters.
The Public Works Committee raised this issue because we see ourselves headed towards a project that we may not really like the outcome of, that may not be a substantial improvement to the intersection, but also that we don't have the money for. The construction estimate that you put on the screen there is for $5 million, but that's a 5-year-old estimate, so it's assumedly at least $6 million, right? I mean, that would be a straight adjustment for inflation. But pavement has maybe inflated more than that. I don't know. But it also doesn't include property acquisition, right?
Yes.
And we don't know what that number is. Maybe it's 500, maybe it's 2 million, you know. So without knowing that number, and with the deadline that is coming up for one of the grant sources, we thought it was pretty important to put this back before council and to reconsider whether we really wanted to pursue an intersection that was so large in scope, although not a very large roundabout, which could solve some of the problems, and may not have the design elements really that we were looking for at the end of the day, especially versus the intersection that is in our 2016 South Commercial Plan, which is mostly or apparently within the existing roadway and maybe does meet our objectives. And the project description in the capital facilities plan is a project to improve safety, improve pedestrian facilities and bicycle facilities at that intersection. And as the Public Works Director has pointed out a couple of times, we could achieve greater capacity through the intersection simply by upgrading the hardware of the signalized intersection. So that's a little bit of the background on why we thought this needed to be in front of us. We did get that presentation from Alta several weeks ago, and that, in a couple of our minds, raised more questions than it did answers. And so the discussion tonight, as I understand from the packet, you're asking us for direction on whether or not we do want to proceed on the original course of the roundabout, or change course and do something like this.
Yeah, that's exactly the direction that we're looking for, because as soon as that meeting happened on the 4th of March, we stopped all progress down the roundabout path. And again, for members of the public, I think it's important to realize, yeah, we spent money on a 30% design, but that's kind of one of the reasons why you do spend the money on the 30% design, to find out, guess what, we didn't get we're still not satisfied with the answers that we got. Safeway ingress, egress, is this really gonna make a difference in pedestrian safety? Is it really going to make a difference in traffic flow? So again, I'm very comfortable if council wants to direct a different direction. But maybe before we do that, members of the public that really want us to hang on to the roundabout idea, no, I'm kidding. But any members of the public who wish to address the council on this thing before we let council go at it? Okay, council.
Mayor.
Oh, so yeah, come on. Come on, yep.
Mayor, council members, I'm Pat Gardner, Anacortes. I'm happy to see this. It just needs better signage and clarity and kind of tweaking it to accommodate bikes, pedestrians, cars and stuff. But that roundabout would have been fine if Safeway wasn't there, like I mentioned before. Anyway.
Okay, thank you. Okay, council, over to
Mayor
you.
Miller?
Was that Mr. McDougall?
Just from my benefit, but also for, I guess, folks listening in, what are some examples of like what changes would signalized intersection bring about?
So currently all the intersections that we have, the signalized intersections we have along State Route 20 are commercial. So they're triggered on there's a circle, you'll see it when you pull up, they're called traffic rings or signal rings, and they detect your car. And so then the signal knows like, okay, there's a car waiting. And all the technology we have right now is it'll turn that light green because you're there. Well, and then the timer starts. So it's a timer-based system where that's like 1980s-ish technology. Lots changed since then, where you can actually have smart signals where they actually communicate amongst the corridor. And so you could literally drive straight through all of them in ideal conditions. Obviously they'd be green, so you could just get right through the corridor. There's also there's different technology nowadays that the signals definitely, if you're the only one there and there's nobody else coming, it'll switch right for you. It'll stop doing the timer, the timing because somebody else tripped the signal from the other direction.
Great, so it sounds like, I mean, obviously stuff above ground changes, but also stuff like there could be some digging up of roadway or planting like different sensors in the roadway?
The sensors are the same in the roadway, but there's optics and there's cameras and things that will see that it uses a different set of information.
Okay.
But there you always have the loops in the
So
in the
really
roadway.
pretty minimally disruptive as far as...
To swap out just the signals?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think we're looking at doing a little more of that, the improvements on the sides of the road. One thing that I found out with the roundabouts, you would literally, so the entirety of commercial is 12 inches of concrete with 6 inches of asphalt on top. And they were going to dig all that out of there to do the roundabout, where if this would likely just be an overlay, but they would be doing work on the sides of the roads. So one of the things, especially from our avenue being closed, not closing this intersection sounds very enticing to me, especially this summer after we had a pretty rough go at it with our avenue closed as long as we did. So
great.
There's
Thank
that
you.
to consider as well as just the actual impacts to the community.
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton.
Thank you, Mr. Regan. I appreciate the information. And I have a question about the Transportation Improvement Board grant of the $950,000 for design and construction. So if we don't go forward with the roundabout plan, do we totally lose that?
No. So they want to know, though, what we are doing, what the schedule is, and guarantee that we actually have the funding to back up what we plan to do. At first, yes, that's what they said. They're like, we're done with you. You've had this grant. You've been sitting on it for 5 years. We're taking it back. And so, and then we've started to talk to them, and then we've come to that conclusion where they really just want us to spend the money. And so what they need us to do is to tell them when and how fast we will be able to spend their grant.
Great. So essentially, we're optimistic that we will not lose any of these large funding.
I'd say we have a good chance of keeping all the funding. It's just that we got to move on this. If we're going to switch to the signalized intersection, we've got to move, and I'll continue to communicate with both TIB, Transportation Improvement Board, and the State Department of Transportation.
Thank you.
Miller?
Mr. Young.
Thank you. You know, the Public Works Committee, Ms. Moulton, Mr. Walters, myself, and of course, our director and team, you know, have had any number of discussions about how we move forward. You know, if this is something we really want to do, how will it benefit our city? And, you know, and that includes all of the successes and challenges we hope to be able to address. Part of this for me is I've always been fiscally conservative in the sense of, you know, dollars and cents. And I think we had I have an opportunity to use some dollars for the greater good of our city. And I think, though, that with that said, I do think it's important that if we can figure out how we can use these dollars, if we were to move away from the roundabout, I've never really been a big fan, but I've also been amenable to discussion. I think I've said it in a number of times that, you know, sometimes funding can be a solution in search of a problem. And what I mean by that, in this case, you know, I think that we had an issue, but I think that there are other alternatives. What I'm hoping we can find out is, can we move this money and do other things like part of what we were planning, sort of like take pieces here and pieces there if we can? And I think Ms. Moulton asked that question, and we're going to defer to you to be able to work your magic to make sure we keep as much of it as we can in that whole process. But with that, though, I really wanted to make sure that, as you know, when it comes down to the design, one of the questions I have for our designer will be the longevity of what it takes to sort of tweak what we've got. I think in the packet or the information it said 14, 15 months in order to sort of turn this thing around. I was hoping we could do something a little bit faster than that. And is that because of the workload of the consultant, or is, I guess what I'm looking to is, I think our greatest challenge is really right now about 12th and Commercial, that part of it. I don't find that there's been much hesitation by council on the other parts of it. I think there are tweaks, you know, whether we bump out or bump in, and I heard Mr. Walters or some of the others speak to that point. But I'm hoping we can come back with something sooner and begin this process. No, I don't think we're ready to begin immediately after what happened on R Avenue. I think some of the businesses during our high season are a little worried at this point. But, you know, I'm hoping we can get back to a design before 14, 15 months. I think we should try to see, because I'm hoping if we can keep our hands on this money and just address those differences, maybe that's what we can do. But I guess my concern was the 14 or 15 months, and whether that was because their workload, they're big, you know, all of the stuff associated with it, and I'm just trying to move forward. Thank you.
I was also concerned about the estimate that the consulting firm gave us for how long they think this would take. That's what the issue is. The granting agencies are kind of like, you guys need to spend it. they want to close out the grants. They've got more grants every year that get piled onto them. So yeah, if you guys want to go with a signalized intersection, that will be the first phone call and meeting that I'll have with the consultants is why is it going to take that long?
And you'll come back to us. I know you're working through it, and I do appreciate your effort. I really do. I'm just, that 14 or 15 months to come back, for me, that's just excessively long, it would seem. But I'm hoping we can find a solution, a better solution than that.
Yeah, Alta's been on contract since 2019.
Yeah. I was going to say, since the city attorney's not here, revisiting the contract is what I'm hearing as well. All right.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters?
For me, the most black and white component of this is we're assuming a $5 million cost in 2019 dollars, which would be a $6 million cost in 2024 dollars, and we don't have that money. We have $3.6 million in grants. We've got $1.4 million in city funds, but some of those city funds are pavement management. They're REIT that can be spent on anything else. Almost. Sidewalk money. We have worse sidewalks in town. I mean, this would not be our priority to spend that sidewalk money on, I wouldn't think, unless we are getting a substantially improved intersection. I do think it's important to get it right here because there are a lot of pedestrians through this intersection. It's the gateway to town. There have been accidents. There has been a death. The roundabout design just didn't, to me, look like an improvement to address that problem. And I think we kept kind of waiting for Alta to come back with some enhancements to the design that did improve it for pedestrians and bike, and that just doesn't seem to be happening. We have had kind of a lot of waiting for those better answers to the questions. One of them was Safeway ingress and egress, and I think what some of us heard at that meeting with Alta was we don't see a problem, but we see a problem. So I think that was definitely an indication that we needed to change course here. But at the end of the day, even if we wanted to continue to pursue the current design for the roundabout, we don't have that cash because we have $5 million in cash if we line up those city funds, the 1.4 in city funds, but then it's at least $1 million more just to get to the inflation-adjusted $6 million plus right-of-way acquisition. So, I don't see where the funding is coming from here. I mean, obviously that there are funds we can tap, but those are choices, and those are other things that then don't get funded. So, again, if it were a fantastic solution to that intersection, then that would be one thing. But if it's just a meh, I don't see us digging deep to make that happen. Instead, there are sidewalks all over town that could benefit from that money, and roads all over town that need to get paved. So I would prefer, I think we should do something akin to what's on the screen right now that is an actual improvement that does make use of the grant money we've been able to achieve. But I would even err on the side of leaving it alone if we had to, versus trying to find another couple $1 million to do a roundabout design that isn't going to be a huge improvement.
Okay, I haven't heard from Ms. Cleland McGrath or Mr. Fantini. Ms. Cleland McGrath, you want to go?
So my first comment is, cost. I'm really uncomfortable with the fact that we don't have an updated idea of how much it's going to cost from the 2019 bid. I would be curious to know, for example, this project, what we're seeing right now on the screen, what the estimate would be to do these improvements. So that's my first question. And then also, my other concerns is, I think we've all heard roundabouts are good because no one has to wait, right? It keeps traffic flowing. But if you've been at the top of, the south side of Commercial where you enter Highway 20, and you actually see a bicyclist or a pedestrian try to use those crosswalks where they cross the first one and then they have to wait and hope that someone stops in the crosswalk to cross a second one. If the reason we're spending all of this and doing this huge project and spending all this money is for pedestrian and bicycle safety, I actually think this is probably safer for those folks. I get my other question is, I'm looking at this and I see the right-of-way dashed lines. Are those current right-of-ways, or are we going, does this design require acquisition of land?
So those dash lines are your current right-of-way. When I asked the consultant, like, so we're good, we don't need right-of-way, and they said, well, we might need a sliver here and there, so it won't be like taking out an entire property or anything like that.
Okay.
We're talking very small pieces of property that we'd have to acquire.
Okay.
But for the most part, I think we could try to make it fit within what we have.
So I think that that's something that I would want to hear at our next meeting from Alta is, do we, slivers is a little too vague for me when we're actually talking about whether or not we just leave it as is or go in a different direction. Leave it as it is, and as in the sense of what Mr. Walter said of stopping any change at all versus looking at something like this. I'm in agreement that I don't think the roundabout makes sense. The 6 months of construction is just insane to me. So I would really like to have a clear understanding of, does this all fall in the right of way, and really detailed how much we would have to acquire if there is any acquisition required. Then finally, and it's been brought up for a number of years now, is how does this affect 11th and Commercial? Because to me, that is just as important, not just as important, but incredibly important for pedestrian safety. That intersection is almost more dicey for cars turning left and right across traffic and folks trying to get across that intersection as it is with a lighted stoplight at 12th and Commercial. So I really want that to be included in the discussion. And then, reading Alta's review of traffic studies, at some point, do we need to have a better traffic study that is more accurate and done in a time of year where it's not necessarily the busiest, but it's not the quietest, so that we make sure that this makes sense. That was kind of my last point, that I guess I'm a little worried about Alta as a consultant and the time we've put in with them, and where we're currently at. And I know it takes a while, and 30% is, as the mayor said, that's why we do it, to figure out if it makes sense or not, and this is our time to reset and change course. But that 15 to 17 months is too long, in my opinion, and we've got to get something. We have to have some answers about what direction we need to go in a lot sooner.
Yeah. Go ahead.
There was one other thing I was going to say, but yeah, that's okay. That's all.
Sorry, I just wanted to address the point about coming back next week with those answers. I mean, that's just not realistic, because that's why we do. You can't go out to bid like coming back and say, how much is this going to cost versus the roundabout. That's just not realistic, and that's why we have to do 30% designs. You can't go out to bid with a 10% design in this world.
Well,
so,
but I wasn't trying to say next
okay.
week. No. But
sorry.
6 months. I mean, I feel like we met with them in the summertime, and they came back a month ago, and there was a number of questions that we had asked 6 months ago that hadn't been addressed.
Yeah, no, and that's why I think that's why we're here, because we're not happy with the answers that we got. We know council's not happy with those answers, and that's why we're asking council tonight, hey, do we want to go down a different path? Mr. Fanti, go ahead.
Can I do my
Ms.
last
Moulton.
comment? You gave us the grants that we have available that are pending and whatnot. If we decide not to move forward and just leave it as is, do we owe any money on those grants that we will have to pay back?
So I asked that specifically, and no, we will not have to pay it back.
All right, Mr. Fantini.
Mayor Miller. Well, I love the roundabout. April Fools, I hate it. In reviewing everything, when I try to make a decision about something, I always go back and see, like, what is the origin, what are the things that are really pushing for the change, why are we doing this? And there have been a couple of things mentioned, everything from ferry traffic to beautification of the downtown area, safety, and I just don't feel that a roundabout would, nobody can guarantee that a roundabout will fix those issues. Nobody can really say, and you read the traffic studies, and I think they said here in their comparison that vehicle queuing, well, there's reduced queuing for a roundabout. Well, yeah, for some people, but what about the people that are waiting to get into it when there's ferry traffic coming down? They're going to be queuing for quite some time in some of those other areas. So I'm not a big fan. I agree with Mr. Walters wholeheartedly that the funding is a big issue. I mean, if we don't have the funds to acquire the area that we need or the property that we need, time and money can definitely be spent in a better area, especially if there's no guarantee that this roundabout is going to lead to the desired effect. Mr. Young mentioned about timing and sort of, when this was originally put before council, I wasn't on council, but I was sitting out there listening to it, and it was very much shown as like this was going to be the beginning of the whole entire commercial, specifically the downtown area, but then moving on up and whatnot. And my question would be, if it's going to take, and I appreciate your willingness to push to say, hey, we need these plans sooner, but if it's going to take that long, are there other parts of commercial that we all agree on that we can just get started on? Is there money available to do that? Because, for a long time we've heard about commercial needs to be redone, and it's great to start with this 12th and commercial intersection, but what are the other pieces? Does it have to start there? Can we attack some other areas and do that? One of the other things that I don't want to get lost, and I'm very much in favor of going to that signalized intersection and losing this roundabout idea behind us, but the Safeway parking lot. I know we can't tell people how to run their businesses, nor do I want to do that as an elected official, but there is always, I think Ms. Moulton had even mentioned it previously, that intersection, when you come in there, the fact that it feeds traffic from that side parking of commercial into the most congested spot, I mean, even just by turning that parking to face the other way would alleviate some of the traffic and congestion that's happening there, because people would have to leave through 11th Street? No, through 13th Street. So I don't want us to lose that piece. I think 11th Street is extremely important as well for flow. I would say that 13th Street is also very important for flow. I had huge questions about, our fire station is right there. How is a roundabout going to affect the ability of our emergency responders to move? There's a lot of questions that I had. Roundabouts always seem to work well when the sole objective is to move the traffic. But we didn't see that from the traffic study that was done. There were some, moderate improvements in traffic flow here and there. But the heavy areas were still going to be the heavy areas. And I didn't see enough to move forward with it. So I'm very much in favor of moving past this roundabout and exploring that signalized intersection.
Okay, well, thanks, council, for the input. Of course, the question at hand, and sometimes you got to make a decision with not 100% of the information. That's just the way it is. And but we're looking for the direction of moving forward with not the roundabout, I guess. I know there's some questions about do we even do anything with that intersection, and I heard that from council as well. But I think it's safe to. I think I've heard based on the 30% design info we have that we do not want to move forward with the roundabout.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Fantini and then Ms. Moulton. Or Ms. I'm sorry, Ms. Moulton, because Mr. Fantini was speaking before.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Ms. Moulton and then Mr. Fantini.
Just a quick question about timing, the 15 to 17 months for Alta to have construction bid documents ready. I don't know how long these different parts of the process work, but if they were going to get us from 30% design now to beginning construction in a few months, I'm very curious as to why we couldn't be a little bit farther along sooner, getting to 60%, 90% design within, if they've already dedicated all this time, they're going to get us building this roundabout. Some of that time can go to this change of plans, I would think, but that's not my area of expertise.
It took us 5 years to get to 30% sorry, I shouldn't laugh. Took us 5 years to get to 30% design. So yeah, we can, I think we can move faster. That's just what their quote was on how long it would take. While I'm gabbing, just real quick about the other places do make investments in our transportation system. So we are, council approved a transportation master planning effort that we are starting. We kicked it off on Friday, and that will definitely answer that question about, with the amount of funding we have, where are we going to do the investments? And it involves the council, it'll involve the public. It'll be a process. By the end of the year, we'll have a lot better understanding for the next 10 years where we're going to put investments in our transportation system. Just to kind of add that on. We don't have that now, but we will.
Mr. Fantini with.
Well, because time seems to be of the essence, and there seems to be a lot of agreement among us up here on council, I would move that the city proceed with the planning of a signalized intersection at 12th and Commercial and work with our funding partners to make changes to the scope and schedule of that project.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Fantini, a second by Mr. Walters to proceed with building a signalized intersection at 12th and Commercial, work with our funding partners to make changes to the scope and schedule of the project. Any additional discussion, Mr. Walters?
And I think it's important that we have reviewed what was in the 2016 South Commercial Plan. This design, is a 5%, a 10% design, right? But this as the design inspiration for a modern signalized intersection, I think is what we're talking about. And is probably something close to this is the only thing that would qualify for the funding, right? Because it's bike and pedestrian oriented funding. So I expect that we'll see something looking kind of like this coming back, either from staff or from our consultant as we try to figure out how to move forward here. Personally, I think it's also very important that we pave 11th as part of the project. Now, it doesn't necessarily qualify for the funding, but if you're tearing the street up anyway and you're mobilizing these contractors, 11th is like a little roller coaster through there, and the intersection at 11th gets done as part of this. It seems like it would only be the best use of public money to pave 11th between O and Q at the same time. Whether it's funded out of this grant money or funded out of our TBD money, our general pavement overlay money, we got to get 11th done.
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Young.
I love that my colleague, Mr. Walters, can think in-depthly on a myriad of issues and succinctly bring them together and connect them. I would suggest, though, that before we go down to what we're going to do with the money, I would suggest that we sort of figure out how we can get there with the choices that we're beginning to make now, and that further discussion into exactly where will come a little bit later. I hope you understand what I'm saying to you. I guess what I'm saying is that no, we don't want to throw in 11th right now or 13th right now until we figure out what we can do with the money. Because I think once we figure out what we can do with the money and how we can do it and how much time we've got, and I think then it may allow us to have other fixes that we may deem more important as a council in addressing some of the things.
Yeah, and we still have a consultant on contract to try to get to some of these answers sooner rather than later. I heard that loud and clear. And again, I do have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
Yeah. With all due respect, Mr. Young. Oh, sorry.
Ms. Cleland McGrath.
Yep. With all due respect, Mr. Young, I really think that we have to include 11th in the planning process. If you go north of 11th, the Archway, you've got pretty clear bicycle paths and good pedestrian sidewalks. But if you have this desert between 11th and 12th, or 11th and the intersection, we have to address it all at once. Otherwise, I mean, and I would say, at least individually, I would not approve a project for 12th and Commercial without having confidence that we have a plan for 11th and what impact it will have on it.
Mayor Millie, if I might respond, please.
Mr. Young.
Thank you. No, I'm in total agreement with you. That wasn't what the point that I was making, though. The point that I was making was Mr. Walters, in his vision forward, was talking about the corrections that also need to be done. And I was just thinking that let us first decide how we're going to move forward from this place, from a roundabout to whatever it's going to be done, and what monies we will have in order to make the decisions that we are. I agree with you. All streets in all of the discussion will be back on the table. That's true, but that wasn't what I was asserting. I was just saying to Mr. Walters, when he was talking about some curves and other stuff, that after we figure out what money we have, what we can use it for, and how quickly we can get designs, then we'll figure all the rest of, because it all comes after that.
Okay. Mr. Walters.
I agree with Ms. Cleland McGrath, and I think I also agree with Mr. Young, and that drives me crazy. I would just ask to please don't ignore 11th. We have a roller coaster there. We need to figure it out. If it's a separate project, I presume that that is less efficient. But I think I agree with Mr. Young is saying.
In the little time I've spent scrutinizing traffic engineers, rarely do they not look at the adjacent intersection when they're looking at to see the performance. I haven't.
Well, and to be clear, not the intersection is part of this and part of the roundabout plan. It's that simply the overlay between commercial and Q and commercial and O that I was concerned.
Okay. Great. Good discussion. I do have a motion by Mr. Fantini and a second by Mr. Walters. Again, just a reminder to proceed with the signalized intersection, 12th and Commercial. And again, this is not moving forward with the roundabout for public's. Mr. Franciac, thank you.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
Mr. Walters.
Yes.
Ms. Cleland McGrath.
Yes.
Ms. Moulton.
Yes.
Mr. McDougall.
Yes.
Mr. Fantini.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Great discussion. On to item 6C. This is a contract award, 2024 water line replacement. This is a discussion item, possible action. Mr. Rayam.
I'm still here. Mayor and Council, before you is a contract with C. Johnson Construction, the amount of $1,480,893 to replace asbestos cement pipes under parts of 22nd, 23rd, 24th, H Avenue, and G Avenue. The vicinity map is included in your meeting materials. The city annually replaces asbestos cement pipe that has reached or exceeded its useful life. We also target pipes that have shown failures, main breaks typically. These pipes were selected for both these reasons. The budget and engineer estimate were slightly more than the contract before you, so the project is within budget. And that is what I have to present.
Council, any questions for Mr. Rayam on this contract? All right, any motions then?
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Young.
I move that City Council authorize the mayor to sign contract 24-010-WTR-001 with C. Johnson Construction, Inc. in the amount of $1,480,893.66.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Young, a second by Mr. Fantini to approve the contract award as presented. Any additional discussion? Mr. Franciac?
Mr. Walters.
Yes.
Ms. Cleland McGrath.
Yes.
Ms. Moulton.
Yes.
Mr. McDougall.
Yes.
Mr. Fantini.
Yes.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next up, item 6D, contract award, solid waste consulting service. Discussion, possible action. Mr. Rayam.
Thank you, Mayor. Before you use a contract with Hans Van Dusen, I was disappointed he does not have a German accent, in the amount of $16,000 to perform solid waste consulting services. Hans is an experienced consultant that specializes in assisting local governments in the procurement of solid waste hauler contracts. The city's current contract with Waste Management to haul residential and recyclables and organics It was initiated July 1 of 2015 and ends May 30th, 2025. The contract terms include a one-year extension that is solely the city's option and does not change the terms of the contract. The contract also includes a second one-year term extension that Waste Management and the city would both agree to and would likely include changing the terms of the contract, mainly the price. Due to our current contract ending in May of 2025, and this was actually under his suggestion, Hans's suggestion, the city needs to start the process of establishing a new residential recycle and organics hauling contract. And the reason is that the haulers, they need to purchase trucks, they need to hire people, they need to ramp up their capabilities to actually to be competitive in the process. So a lot has changed in the solid waste industry since 2015, mainly how we manage recyclables and the cost of that and what can be recycled. The cost of recycled materials has increased significantly over the past decade. In Hans's background, he has the experience and expertise to know what kind of is the going rate of hauling, recycling, and organic materials, the market pressures, and what services are common and what fees are common and what is recyclable is also a common thing that we need to update since our 2015 contract. It's also important, I already went over that they have to acquire all their stuff. In terms of process, so I just want to make sure council is well aware the consultant and I aren't going to wander off and just do this contracting on our own. It's the city's contract, it's the city council's contract, so there will be touch points along the way. With this, I recommend that we do just plan on extending the contract for 1 year. The second piece of going to negotiate with Waste Management about an additional year is questionable. If we need to do that, it just depends on how Waste Management responds to give us your best shot type of question and see what they come up with for that 1 year extension, or you just enter into negotiations with Waste Management directly, or you can put it out on the street. But either way, we're all going to come here at a council meeting and discuss that going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Walters.
Thank you for that addendum, because that is important. The last time when we went out for a solid waste contract, we also had a consultant help us with the contract terms and the RFP. Do you know what consultant that was?
But it was Chad Brown, but he's retired. He used to do that across Western Washington.
And might have been.
I don't know who you guys had last time, but I've used him in 2 different other cities, and he's really good.
And how did we select this contractor?
I called the city of Redmond and asked them who they're using now that Chad Brown's retired. That's where I used to work.
And we like his credentials?
Yeah, no, he's solid. He's who you hire.
Thank
you. Miller?
Mr. Young?
Just a quick question. I'm very much in favor of moving forward, but I'm always curious, and this may be a question for Ms. Swetnam, but have we, given that we are a group of small cities, not very far from one another, and there are big cities that, it could encompass our whole area, have we ever looked into could we possibly negotiate as a collective? I mean, I find that when you negotiate, when you're smaller entities with bigger entities, you don't have the same amount of leverage. And I was just curious if that was part of it. I know this is not part of this, and I'm sure, but I was just wondering, are there any legal reason why we couldn't negotiate, let's say, with Lacan or, or any of the other cities?
That's a great question. I think that the city is responsible for waste collection, solid waste collection within the city.
Right.
And so, there are very specific under state law rules for procurement for solid waste handling. There is an opportunity to negotiate, but I think that, I'm not aware that any agencies have been able to find some benefit from negotiating jointly. Mr. Rayo may have better thoughts on that than I do. But
Great question to ask the consultant.
Yeah, he'd know.
That's what I was thinking too.
I've never heard of that either, but I don't know why it wouldn't be possible unless, yeah, there's very specific laws around how you procure a solid waste hauler for your community. I think one of the things too that I realized over time working on solid waste stuff is that it is pretty community specific. And like if you like your hauler or not is actually a big deal. And so kind of, you know, I've never seen cities be able to try to get on the same page about that. So I don't know if it's possible. And we all have different rhythms to when our contracts were let and when they expire. And
No, I totally get that. I mean, I really do. And I know each of the cities, but there are some common threads that, you know, when you look at the price points, whether it's the number or whatever that is, I just think that it creates an opportunity, and I'm sure you will explore it with the consultant. But I think, you know, I would be curious, and, you know, I know every city is different, but, you know, there are common threads associated with every city. And so if it becomes more cost effective, if we can, I'd be curious the outcome. That's all I'm saying. I'll leave that up to you guys, but I wanted to pose that. And if you would, whenever we get to this consultant, ask that question and then see, I'd be curious as to get the answer to that. Thank you.
Yep. Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters.
Yes, Jeff Brown was our consultant last time. Okay. I would also say that when we start to move beyond simple extensions, there will be other choices to be made. Do we want yard waste to be integrated on the same bill? Do we want to go after smaller containers for yard waste, for kitchen food scraps, like other communities have? There will be potentially lots of choices to be made. So I think that there will be a lot of conversations that we'll need to queue up for council to engage on that. And people care. I mean, one of the big issues when I got on council was that my ward didn't get garbage service at the same rate other wards did because the city simply didn't pick up on the days following holiday, the entire week following holidays. I can't tell you how many people I heard from about that, and fortunately we were able to get that fixed. But it does really matter to people, so we will want to engage in a substantial way on that.
of course, yep.
Mayor Miller. Mr. McDougall.
I guess sounds good to me. So I move that City Council authorize the mayor to sign the contract with Hans Van Dusen, the amount of $16,000 to perform solid waste consulting services.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McDougall, a second by Mr. Young to approve the contract for consulting services as presented. Any additional discussion? Mr. Franciac?
Ms. Cleland McGrath.
Yes.
Ms. Moulton.
Yes.
Mr. McDougall.
Yes.
Mr. Fantini.
Yes.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
Mr. Walters.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, next up, 6E, Resolution 3153, lodging tax funding use for Phase 2 Rotary Park Cap Santa Viewpoint Project. This is a discussion item with action, although council had previously directed action but I'll turn it over to Mr. Coleman, who will give us that.
You almost took it all away from me. Thank
Sorry.
you, Mayor, Council. So last week, I'm sure the council remembers very well, a discussion about a request for $75,000 in LTAC funding for the Cap Santee Overlook done by the Rotary Club, improvements there. At last week's council meeting, there was a presentation about what the proposal is, and the council had indicated that they were interested in spending the $75,000 in LTAC money on this project and instructed staff to bring back a resolution making it happen. So in front of you tonight is that resolution, and here, that's all I have for you if you're ready for discussion and motion.
Mayor Miller.
Mr. Walters.
The one thing that didn't make it into the resolution was something we talked about and Rotary indicated their assent to was the idea that funding should be obligated within 12 months and lodging tax be spent only if other funds are not available to cover the project cost. And so I would move that we approve the resolution as presented with that line added to the end, that funding must be obligated within 12 months and lodging tax may be spent only if other funds are not available to cover the project cost.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Walters and a second by Mr. Fantini to approve Resolution 3153 with the additional change to obligate the funding as stated. And I think you got that, Mr. Francia, because I wasn't able to write that fast.
I wasn't either.
Mr. Walters, you
Mr.
want to say
Walters,
that
could you
again, the
repeat it,
change?
please?
I can send you an email as well, but funding must be obligated within 12 months and lodging tax may be spent only if other funds are not available to cover the project cost.
Okay.
Did you also want me to say it slower?
No.
I didn't do that part. Funding must be obligated within 12 months and lodging tax may be spent only if other funds are not available to cover the project cost.
Okay. I think we got that one, and that was a motion by Mr. Walters and a second by Mr. Fantini. Any additional discussion? Mr. Francia, call for the vote, please.
Ms. Moulton?
Yes.
Mr. McDougall?
Yes.
Mr. Fantini?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Walters?
Yes.
Ms. Cleland McGrath?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, item 6F, interlocal agreement with Washington Department of Commerce for a climate planning grant. Discussion with possible action, money coming in the door. Mr. Coleman.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, again, Council. So as part of our 2025 Comprehensive Plan Update process, we're required to include a climate element in our comprehensive plan. And most jurisdictions do not have a climate element in their comprehensive plan yet. So the state has appropriated large amounts of money to local jurisdictions to do the work of putting the climate element and doing the studies that are necessary for that element, which is largely including studying vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions. The Washington State Department of Commerce is meeting out these grants, and our city is eligible for a $500,000 grant. In the packet is the grant agreement itself, and it stipulates that we'll be spending it on climate-related issues and the studies and work. There's not a lot of strings attached with this $500,000, and so we intend to use it for a broad outreach program to make sure that people have the opportunity to participate in the element update, or creation, I should say. And so hopefully this $500,000 goes far enough for that. We do intend to use a contract consultant to do the vast majority of the work, and that contract will be coming to the council next week, but we got to accept the money before we spend the money. So that's all I have to
Questions for
present.
Mr. Coleman?
Mayor Miller?
Ms. Moulton?
We've talked about this a couple of times, both at Planning Committee and I believe here at Council, and this is going to be very helpful as we plan this necessary element in our next comprehensive plan. So I move that City Council authorize the mayor to execute interlocal cooperation agreement 24120PLN001 between the City of Anacortes and Washington State Department of Commerce.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Moulton, a second by Mr. McDougall to authorize me to sign the interlocal as presented. Any additional discussion?
Mayor Miller?
Mr. Walters.
Two things. First of all, I would note that the contract is, as other commerce contracts are, it's based on deliverables. It's not sufficient simply to incur the expense and get reimbursed. We got to deliver a product. So I think it's useful for us all to keep that in mind as we move forward on this. But also, the schedule that is laid out in the grant agreement gets us the element and the adopted comprehensive plan by the end of June. The statutory deadline has been expanded to the end of the year, 2025. So maybe they will provide us some flexibility there going forward.
Commerce is generally very flexible on these types of grants. We needed to get the grant done, and it was already well in process long before that was before that extension was granted. And I don't know the details, but I do know that Libby checked in with the Department of Commerce to see how it affects this grant, and they're still not really entirely sure, but they think that they're probably going to just be able to extend those deliverable dates out.
Okay.
In
Yeah.
accordance with the new timelines.
I think that would obviously be helpful for us to have that extra 6 months for the comp plan adoption, but it also occurs to me that the climate element should drive edits to other elements. You know, it should inform how we update the comp plan overall, because the climate element seems unlikely to going to have a bunch of magic climate bullets that can solve these problems. It's going to be a much larger scope that we need to address throughout the comprehensive plan and through everything that we do. So despite the timeline that's in here, we really, I think, all as a council and as a community need to be thinking about these issues well in advance of the deadline of the end of next year, so that we're really informed about them and thinking about how we can affect change throughout the city to deal with these issues in the context of the entire comp plan. So I hope that was clear enough, but it's very important work that's going to affect us all. And it's very important, just like with housing, that everybody do this work, not just Anacortes, but that all the other jurisdictions in the state and beyond. So I'm very glad that we're finally doing this. We had conversations in 2008 about adopting a statewide mandate for a climate element in our comprehensive plans, and here it is 2024, better late than never, but it's so long overdue. We are now further behind the 8 ball on we have to make faster progress as a result.
Okay, still a motion by Ms. Moulton and a second by Mr. McDougall. Any additional discussion? Mr. Franciac, take the vote, please.
Mr. McDougall?
Yes.
Mr. Fantini?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Walters?
Yes.
Ms. Cleland McGrath?
Yes.
Ms. Moulton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, item 7, no further business before the council. I will adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you.